I was sitting on the edge of my bed staring at my phone when my dad sent the message that made my stomach drop. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a conversation. It was an order. He told me that if I didn't attend my golden sister's wedding, he would cancel my tuition payments immediately. No discussion, no negotiation. Years of my life, my future, my education, all dangled in front of me like a leash. And the worst part was that the wedding wasn't just a wedding. It was the final celebration of a lifetime of favoritism that had crushed me slowly, quietly, and relentlessly. So tell me honestly, before you judge me for what I did next, was I wrong for finally refusing to play my role in their perfect little family? Would you have gone if your entire future was being held hostage? I guess to really understand why that message hit me the way it did, I have to start from the beginning. Because my relationship with my family, especially my dad and my older sister, wasn't always openly hostile. On the surface, we looked like a normal family. My dad worked a solid job, my mom stayed home when we were younger, and we lived in a nice enough house in a quiet neighborhood. But from as early as I can remember, there was always a hierarchy, and I was never at the top of it. My sister, who I'll call Emily, was what everyone in our family referred to as special. She was beautiful, outgoing, athletic, and effortlessly good at everything she tried. Teachers loved her. Coaches praised her. Relatives bragged about her like she was some kind of trophy, and my dad absolutely worshipped the ground she walked on. I was the opposite. I was quieter, more awkward, more academic than athletic. I liked books, art, and being alone. I wasn't bad, I wasn't a troublemaker. I just wasn't Emily. And in my dad's eyes, that made all the difference. Growing up, it was subtle at first. Emily would get praised for a B because she worked so hard, while I'd get questioned for an A-. If Emily forgot her chores, my dad would laugh it off and say she was busy. If I forgot, it turned into a lecture about responsibility and respect. At birthdays, Emily's gifts were always bigger, more thoughtful, more expensive. I learned early not to complain, because anytime I did, I was labeled dramatic, sensitive, or jealous. By the time we were teenagers, the favoritism wasn't subtle anymore. Emily got a car for her 16th birthday. I got a used laptop that my dad reminded me was an investment and not a gift. When Emily decided she wanted to try out for cheerleading, my dad rearranged his entire schedule to support her. When I said I wanted to attend a summer program related to my interests, he told me we didn't have the money and that I needed to be realistic. Funny how money always appeared when Emily needed something, but somehow vanished when it was my turn. The worst part wasn't even the material stuff. It was how invisible I felt. Family dinners revolved around Emily's achievements, her stories, her problems. If I tried to speak, I'd be interrupted or ignored. My dad would make eye contact with her when he talked, laugh at her jokes, soften his voice for her. With me, he was cold, critical, distant. I remember one night in high school, when I finally snapped and asked him why he treated us so differently. He didn't even deny it. He just said Emily needed more support because she had so much potential, and that I was independent enough to handle things on my own. That sentence stayed with me for years. When it came time for college, things got even more complicated. Emily decided not to go right away. She wanted to travel, find herself, and eventually settled into a comfortable life with a boyfriend who came from money. My dad supported her every step of the way, paid for trips, helped with rent, covered emergencies without hesitation. Meanwhile, I worked my ass off to get into a good school. I applied for scholarships, took on part-time jobs, and still couldn't cover everything. That's when my dad made a big show of offering to pay my tuition, but it came with strings attached. He made it very clear that this was a privilege, not a right, and that I needed to stay grateful and respectful if I wanted the support to continue. At the time, I swallowed my pride and agreed. I told myself it was temporary, that I just needed to get through school, and then I could finally be free. For a while, things were manageable. I kept my head down, focused on my studies, and limited my interactions with my family. Emily and I were cordial but not close. She rarely reached out unless she needed something, and I stopped expecting anything from her. Then she got engaged. The announcement came during a family dinner. I almost skipped because I had a midterm to study for. Emily walked in flashing her ring, and everyone exploded with excitement. My dad practically cried. He hugged her, told her how proud he was, how perfect everything was, how this was the happiest day of his life. I sat there smiling politely while my chest felt tight. From that moment on, the wedding became the center of the universe. Every conversation, every plan, every family gathering revolved around it. And once again, I was expected to play my role, quietly and without complaint. At first, I was just expected to attend. Then it escalated. Emily wanted me to help with planning. My dad wanted me to take time off school to travel for wedding-related events. When I said I couldn't because of exams and deadlines, I was accused of being selfish and unsupportive. Emily told me I was ruining her experience by not being more enthusiastic. My dad reminded me more than once how much he was paying for my education and how family should come first. The breaking point came when Emily announced the wedding date. It was right in the middle of my finals week. I told my dad immediately that I couldn't attend on that date without seriously risking my grades. I suggested alternatives. I offered to celebrate separately. I tried to compromise. He shut me down completely. He said Emily's wedding was once in a lifetime, and that my exams could be retaken if necessary. When I pushed back, he got angry in a way I hadn't seen before. That's when he sent the message. The threat. Attend the wedding or lose my tuition support. So that was the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause for a second and put yourself in my shoes. If your parent had spent your entire life favoring your sibling, minimizing you, controlling you with money, and then finally threatened your future, unless you showed up to celebrate the person who benefited from all of it, what would you do? Would you go and swallow your resentment? Or would you finally say no, no matter the cost? I spent days barely sleeping. I replayed the message over and over in my head. I ran the numbers, the consequences, the risks. Losing my tuition support would mean student loans, possibly taking time off school, maybe even transferring. It was terrifying, but there was also a strange sense of clarity creeping in. For the first time, I realized that no matter what I did, I would never be enough for my dad. Attending the wedding wouldn't change our relationship. It wouldn't suddenly make him proud of me. It would just reinforce the idea that he could control me whenever he wanted. So I made my decision. I called him and told him I wasn't going. I told him calmly, clearly, and without apologizing. I said my education mattered, my mental health mattered, and that I was done sacrificing myself to keep the peace. He exploded. He accused me of being ungrateful, of ruining the family, of embarrassing him. He reminded me again that he was paying my tuition. I told him I understood, and that I would make other arrangements. There was a long silence on the phone before he said coldly that I shouldn't bother contacting him again if that was my choice. The fallout was immediate. Emily sent me a long message calling me selfish and cruel. My mom tried to guilt me into reconsidering, saying I was breaking my father's heart. True to his word, my dad canceled the tuition payments. I cried harder than I ever had before, not just out of fear, but out of grief for the relationship I wished I had. But something unexpected happened too. I felt lighter. For the first time, the control was gone. The months that followed were brutal. I took on more work, applied for emergency aid, took out loans, and leaned on friends who became more family to me than my own ever had. I missed the wedding. I saw the photos later. Emily looked radiant. My dad looked proud, and for once I didn't feel jealous. I felt free. Now, years later, I'm still dealing with the consequences of that decision, both good and bad. My relationship with my family is distant and strained, but my sense of self is stronger than it's ever been. I finished my degree. I built my own life, and I learned that sometimes choosing yourself means being cast as the villain in someone else's story. So that's my story. Maybe some of you think I should have just gone to the wedding and played nice. Maybe others think I did the right thing. All I know is that for the first time, my future was truly my own. If you are on my side in this mess, like this video, subscribe for more stories like this, and share your final thoughts in the comments. I'll see you all in the next story.